Welcome to Turn Up the Heat. I have Jenna Mango in the house from San Diego. Hi, Jenna.
Hi.
Good morning. It's still morning there.
It is. It's only 11:30 here.
It's a very hot afternoon. Sorry if I'm melting. I feel like every time, maybe it's appropriate because my show is Turn Up the Heat, but every time so far in the few episodes that I've done, it's like 100 degrees here in New Hampshire, and I'm just like melting. I have the AC on, but like I can just like feel the sweat dripping off of me still. And I you're probably laughing because in San Diego it's always hot. One of my friends heard my last podcast and I was talking about how it's been 95 all weekend, and he was laughing because he's in Arizona. So him and his wife were making fun of me for complaining about 95 degrees. And actually I'm not complaining because I like it hot, which again, turn up the heat, baby. So what is the temperature over there in San Diego right now?
It's 75 and sunny.
75 and sunny. Wow, you got it made. So everybody, Jenna Mango, I am so excited to have her with us today to talk to us. She is the author of a bestseller book, Choose to Rise, which was released on November 9th, I believe, in 2021. And geez, I don't even know where to begin. First of all, I'll be surprised if anybody listening doesn't relate to Jenna on some level. Keep listening because you will absolutely be inspired to learn how to choose to rise and what it means to Jenna. I met Jenna. I was over at Todd Durkin, one of my mentors over in San Diego. He runs a mastermind, so I'm part of this mastermind. And he brought Jenna in. She's one of the personal trainers at his gym. And he had Jenna come in, 26 years old. She comes in and talks to all of us. And we're all probably at least in our 30s, 40s, 50s. And she just, knocked my socks off talking. Like I immediately had this like affinity for you and everything that you embody, Jenna. So I'm just like so happy to be able to pick your brain. And this conversation can go in a lot of directions. And I promise you all that Jenna can inspire you regardless of your age or what your journey's been. But Jenna has climbed, crawled, fell down, gotten up, pushed, pulled, sounds like an obstacle course race. And through it all, she has chosen to rise through bullying, through heartbreak, through burnout, through abuse, invisible illness, and family struggle. So I'm sure that anybody listening can relate to one or all of the above. I know I certainly can on many levels. But now, Jenna, correct me if I'm wrong, I bet you're living a life now because you chose to rise, living a life that's unrecognizable to you. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And I know that, I think I heard that from Todd, actually, our mentor, is live a life that is going to put you in a position where it's unrecognizable to you. And I'll tell you what, being part of the mastermind, it's been since last October, I think, maybe a little bit before that. Maybe it was September. I don't know how many months is that, like 8, 9, 10 months ago. Like my life is unrecognizable because of the things that I've learned in this mastermind. But everybody, just a refresher, turn up the heat. If you've listened to my other shows, you know a little bit about what Turn Up the Heat is about. It's not about the fact that I love hot sauce. So I'm not even going to go into that today, but I do love hot sauce. Turn Up the Heat is about doing a little bit more. It's about expecting a little bit more from yourself, setting your bar a little bit higher, and you can expect that you're going to have exponential results. And with that, also, we discuss on our show, the mental muscle involved in your journey of turning up the heat. And a big emphasis is how sport, how training, how physical endeavors actually build that mental muscle and transfers into all the other pillars of our life. So about Jenna, a little bit about Jenna, about her background. Jenna is an athlete herself. She trains. You guys are going to be really impressed. I know I was. And I think after obstacle course racing, when I grow up, I want to be just like you, Jenna. I want to get into MMA. But she trains in Hawaiian Kempo, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, and boxing. And this is a perfect time to mention that you are a huge Rocky fan. I don't know anyone that isn't, but which Rocky is your favorite? I have to ask.
Oh, Rocky 4.
I do hear that a lot.
My favorite. Yeah.
Nice, nice. We may talk a little bit more about that, but I know that you're a huge fan. Actually, that's one of the reasons that you and Todd connected, right? He's like,
Yes,
you're hired.
absolutely.
That's awesome. And Jenna is a former collegiate field hockey player. Currently, she's a certified personal trainer and performance coach. Has coached athletes at Fitness Quest 10, which is in San Diego, like I mentioned, which is owned by Todd Durkin and Jeff Gristle. She also is a WTBA World Thai Boxing coach and NLP Neuro-Linguistic Programming Master Practitioner. Previously, Jenna has accepted a position where she spent 4 seasons as an assistant field hockey coach at WestCon. And Jenna has her master's degree from Western Connecticut State University in applied behavior analysis and a bachelor's degree from Eastern Connecticut State University in psychology. So do I have the right person in the house, right in alignment with what turn up the heat in bodies? I think I do. So Jenna, let's dive in. Enough of me talking. Let's talk about your book, Choose to Rise. Two things that really stick out to me about Choose to Rise. I mean, so many things do, but is the title itself and the symbolism of it, the symbolism of the one and the rise. Do you mind walking us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So actually, I have a tattoo, and my tattoo says the word rise, but the I in rise is actually number 1. And it's the way that I've chosen to spell the word rise because of that 1 would symbolize getting 1% better every single day in all aspects of your life, not just in the gym. And so when it came to titling my book, that was the first thing that came to my head was Choose to Rise. Because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, no matter who's in your corner, it's all dependent on you. And you have the choice to rise above any obstacle or setback that may get in your way. It's your choice at the end of the day. And so that was what I wanted my title to be, because I felt like it encapsulated so much of who I am. And so that's why I chose to spell rise the way that it is. And that's why I chose to title it Choose to Rise.
That is so awesome. I love stuff like that. Wow. All right. So you chose to rise in many areas of your life, and it seemed like it was a really compact time in your life at a very young age. Well, not very young, but young. Okay. And is it just innate in you to choose to rise? Like Under Armour says, the only way is through, or is it something that you learn from your parents or a teacher, a mentor, or is that just something that always came to you? And just like walk us through that journey, all that you talk about in your book.
Yeah. So I've been an elite athlete ever since I was 8 years old. And so my main sport, even before field hockey, was actually softball. And I played soccer, basketball, and softball pretty much my entire life up until high school. And I dropped soccer to play field hockey, dropped basketball to play indoor field hockey, and stayed with softball. And throughout my entire time as a young athlete, I was always the smallest one. I was always the tiniest, the skinniest, but I had so much grit and resilience from just this little person.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you look at photos of me playing softball, and I'm just the tiny little one. Everyone's taller than me. Everyone has more muscles than me, but I was the scrappy little one. And so it was something that came from, honestly, just me as an athlete. And my dad was my coach, my softball coach for so many years, that it was just because you're the smallest doesn't mean you can't do the things that these other girls do, and maybe even better. And so that constantly just kept pushing me to be better. And the thing was, with my dad, while he was my coach, he never let me believe how good I really was. He didn't want me to grow up very cocky or conceited. He wanted me to grow up confident. And so with that, he never made me a captain, even though he says to this day that I was a leader. I was a captain on the team, but I just didn't have that title. I didn't have that specific role that came with that. But he did it for a reason. He wanted me to fight and claw my way. That way, anything that I had, any recognition or accolades that I had, that was earned. That wasn't given to me. It wasn't something like, oh, you're the coach's daughter, so obviously, you get all this. No, like I had to fight to get everything that I wanted. So when the time came to play high school sports and, field hockey and softball, and my dad's not my coach anymore, it was something that I just still carried to constantly wanting to better myself and be 1% better. This was before I even came up with, Rise at that point. But I would come home from practice, and if I wasn't satisfied in what I did, I would go home, do what I need to do, get my homework done, and then be like, Dad, can we go out in the street and practice turning double plays, because I just blew it today. But I want to make sure that I'm done and dusted, ready to go for this game this weekend. And so it was just something that I feel like was so built upon in my early years as an athlete that kind of transitioned into being a young adult and a young adult athlete as well. But then to even just propel me and carry me into adulthood, that was just something that just carried with me, honestly.
That's awesome. I feel like there was a time in my life, I'm in my 40s now, but there was a time in my life where I'm like, I feel like nothing's ever handed to me on a silver platter. Like, when is it just going to come easy? Whatever it may be, whether it's something that I want, the house I want, the job I want, whatever the case may be. And then I finally realized that's what makes it better. I mean, I always think too, I had 2 miscarriages before I had my first daughter. And it was probably the first time I realized, wow, this is like adversity in my life. And then when I think back now, reflecting, I had a lot of other adversity in my life, but when I think about it, I'm just like, that made me a better mom. And so as hard as it is sometimes when you're not getting what you want when you want it, there's always a lesson. And so did you ever feel like, why is nothing ever handed on a silver platter to me? Have you ever even thought about that? Or is that just been your life?
Oh, I've thought that multiple times.
Okay.
Like, even it's very hard not to compare yourself to other people.
Yeah.
And, seeing all these other people, at the time, getting into the colleges that they wanted, or, getting the jobs that they want, or, getting the house they want. And it's like, why can't that be me? It's so hard not to compare yourself to other people or other people's journeys. And it's like, I do all this work and I still feel like nothing is in my favor. Mm-hmm. But then you almost have to check yourself. Like, again, you make the choice to rise. You have to make the choice to check yourself at the same time and be like, I'm on my own journey. That's theirs. I'm on mine. Whatever it is just isn't meant for me at this moment in time. Or like you said, it's a lesson to be learned. So that's when you start thinking to yourself, okay, things come into your life as either a blessing or a lesson. Mm-hmm. And if I'm thinking like, why is nothing working out in my favor? Then it's just a lesson at this point. And I need to figure out what that lesson is to be able to fix whatever I need to fix, grow in whatever areas I feel like I need to grow in, to then get to a point where almost something does seem like it's handed to me. And it is a win for me. But at that time, it's not handed to me. I did the work to get that.
Right.
And then, yes, it does feel a lot better knowing that something does work out for you, but that's because you did the work to then get that.
You did the work to get it. And I always say, like, any adversity or something not coming to fruition, either when you wanted to or ever, is actually such a huge gift for you. I mean, and it could be a waste unless you do spend the time. You have to remember to reflect on it. That's why journaling, and we'll get into that, is so important. Now, you mentioned a key thing there. You said, don't compare yourself to others. And I said, this conversation can go in a lot of different directions. Yeah. But that's a huge thing in sports. So I recently, like, I'll just take a real example. I'm really used to going to an obstacle course gym and, just traditional training and boot camps and stuff like that. I recently started CrossFit, and I knew I had to humble myself before I go there, because it's the power snatch, the cleans, and this, and that. And I knew I needed to get the form down. Day one, I knew I was going to have to, and I was going to have to humble myself. But I look at some other people and these girls, and I'm just like, holy cow, the weights they're pushing. And so I really had to humble myself and not compare myself. And that can happen all the time, everywhere, in any sport, as well as in life, So you're so wise already. Share with me any aspect about comparing yourself that you want to talk about that everybody should hear.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it is very easy to compare yourself to other people, but then you have to remember at the end of the day, you're you and they're them. And you can't compare your day 1 to somebody else's day 100.
Yeah.
And you just need to constantly put the work in, get 1% better every single day. And then your 100 is going to look great for you. And that's all you need to worry about is your biggest competition is who's looking back in the mirror at you.
Right.
That's your only competition, not the girl, snatching a crazy amount of weight, not the girl deadlifting a crazy amount of weight. It's you versus you at the end of the day. And you need to have that tunnel vision and be able to recognize that. And when you do find yourself slipping a little bit, because it is going to happen, nobody's perfect, but when you're slipping a little bit and you kind of notice that you're comparing yourself to somebody else, just remember at the end of the day, they're on their journey, you're on yours. Your day 1 is not their day 100.
Right. So when you find yourself slipping and comparing, is that like immediately a trigger? It's almost like automatic at this point for you, where you're like, me against me, my journey, their journey. Like it just automatically happens if you just like catch yourself.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do, I'm not perfect, but sometimes I do find myself in a little bit of a rut, and I'll compare myself to somebody else. And if it's not that immediate switch, like it is on some great days, then it's a matter of, let me remove myself from the world in a sense. Let me sit down with my journal, write these things out. Why am I feeling this way? How do I want to come out of this? What does that look like for me? And be able to almost have these like mini prompts that I'm going to fill out. And then by the end of that, it's almost just like this release. I'm like, okay, I feel so much better. Now let me go do something that I enjoy, that kind of makes me feel grounded again. And then you just get back on track.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And so, all right, like I mentioned earlier, you've been through a lot of different types of adversity back to back. Are there any that you want to delve into? I definitely would love to hear about the invisible illness, because that wasn't even something that you knew about, that stemmed from an injury. So dealing with sports, and and that also has symbolism in your title as well. So we can delve into that, or is there anything else there that you want to talk about as far as one of the struggles or the adversity that was most prominent in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely start with the invisible illness. That's definitely a big one. That's something that I still live with right now. And so, like I said, I never came up with the term for me, rise, when I was younger. But when I went to college, I went to Springfield College for a year to play field hockey. And I actually had a season-ending injury very early on. And so what had happened was I had a breakaway, was taken out by the goalkeeper, flipped over and landed on my back. But at the time, my stick had actually gone into my spine. And so it was that brief moment laying on the turf, not knowing what happened, like almost feeling paralyzed at this point. And just the initial shock, the only thing that came to me at that time was rise up, get up. You need to get up. You need to rise. You don't know what's going on, but you got to get up. And so going to these doctors, they never really told me anything. They just said, it's a season-ending injury. It's your back. So sorry, but your freshman year is done, pretty much. And that really broke me, because I didn't know. And I feel like nobody prepares you for this, regardless if you have an injury or not. Nobody prepares you for what you struggle with when you don't have your sport anymore. When you feel like that's what defines you for so long, you don't know how to deal with it when you don't have it. That's not something that somebody prepares you for. And so to be so early on in my college career and not have my sport anymore, it made me realize that I chose a school based on a sport. I didn't choose a school because I enjoyed it. And so then that was a really big struggle for me. And I didn't realize it until I decided to give the school a real chance when I quit the team, because at the time when I got injured, it was almost like I didn't matter to the coach anymore. And so that broke me as well. And it's like, I didn't matter. The team doesn't care. I can't contribute, quote unquote, contribute anything anymore. So why even be there? Why even put my mental health through that? And so I quit the team. I gave the school a fair chance. By the time I came home for Thanksgiving, I wanted to transfer, but I didn't want to set myself back because I wanted to graduate in 4 years. And so at that point, it's too late to transfer. You're either taking a semester off or you're sucking it up. And that's what I chose to do. I sucked it up. I lasted the full year at Springfield, and then I transferred to Eastern Connecticut State University. And when I transferred, there was still, just this voice in my head, play field hockey again. It's a new team. It's a new coach. It's, the same distance from home, but, it's easier access for parents to get to games. Just do it. And so I played my last 3 years at Eastern, and it was something that was hidden under the surface for so long because after my sophomore year, I needed knee surgery. And so at this point, it wasn't heightened yet. And so I tore my meniscus, got the repair, came back from my junior year, my junior season. And what had happened was they never put me through PT after surgery. They just assured me like, you're going to be fine. And I was like, well, I'm a midfielder. I'm running all over the place, lots of cuts, lots of different directions. They said, no, you're fine. When I showed up for my junior year, it was pretty much taking my junior year and throwing it out the window because I had to spend so much time doing PT that I didn't do after surgery because they were wrong. And there was so much muscle atrophy, through my quads that it was visible. You can see which knee got the surgery and which one didn't. And so my junior year was spent rehabbing, and then come back for my senior year before I left for preseason is when my body actually started shutting down. And nobody knew what was wrong with me. They continued to test me for Lyme's disease that constantly came back negative. And they were like, no, we really think it's a false negative. All these symptoms that you're showing, it kind of, it matches up with that. And I was like, all right, but I don't know what to do. So they gave me a note that I couldn't participate in preseason. I was like, it is my last year ever playing this sport, and I can't even participate in preseason with my team. I need to sit on the sidelines and watch them do everything. That just breaks me. And so when I got to school, they tested me again for Lyme's disease. It still came back negative, but they decided to put me on doxycycline, even though there was no positive test. They were so dead sure that that is what I had. And so if you know what doxycycline is, it's one of the symptoms is a huge sensitivity to the sun. And I'm on the turf in Connecticut in the summer on this medication that I don't need. And so my body is just boiling from the inside out. And so I easily could have chosen to go sit in the shade behind the fence. But I decided if my team's going to struggle, I'm going to struggle. And I'm going to be out there with them. Even though my body's boiling from the inside out, my skin is way more sensitive than theirs, I'm still going to choose to be on the sideline because that is what I can control. That is what I can do. And so my whole senior season, I was called the house patient of Eastern because only Dr. House could figure out what I had. And as much as that was a joke in the beginning and it made me feel better in the moment, as time went on, it got extremely frustrating because all of these names, fibromyalgia, all these things were coming out of their mouths and nobody knew what I actually had. And so fibromyalgia was thrown out the window because I didn't have all these pressure points. And so finally, it got to a point where I felt like these people closest to me don't believe that something is wrong. And so now that took a toll on me. But then it got to a point where my body shut down so much that after I exerted so much energy, my whole body would lock up and I would need help getting up off the ground and walking. And it got so bad that I could be laying in bed and my whole body could lock up that I needed to call Siri and tell Siri to call my mom because I couldn't reach over, grab my phone to call my mom. And so at that point, it's like just almost hoping and praying that my season ends as quickly as possible, because I'm being put in the game in 5-minute increments. I can't even play. There's no starting spot for me. There's no leading scorer. There's no nothing. I'm looking forward to playing 5 minutes. And for every 5 minutes I play, I'm sitting out for 20 so that my body can relax again. And so 6 months after my career ended, I went to the chiropractor with my mom, and he was like, oh, Jenny, you want to come back for an adjustment? Sure, why not? But he was like poking around, and he asked me, has everything been okay lately? I was like, actually, no. Told him what was going on. And he was the one that diagnosed me with chronic thoracic outlet syndrome. And I'm like, first of all, what is that? Second of all, how can you even get this? So you can get it, through birth, you're born with an extra rib, but that wasn't the case. The other one is you can get it through a traumatic injury. And that goes back to Springfield College. And so it's something that I carried with me all those years, didn't even know, went undiagnosed for so many years. And he was like, Jenna, I'm so glad your career is over, because I would have to bench you for good, because this can actually put you under the knife. You'll have to get one of your ribs removed, your first rib. But a lot of times, people that have this now, there's a lot of blood clots, and that's very dangerous. And so he's like, you would have to be benched for good. And I was like, yeah, well, I hear you, but I'm not made of glass. He's like, no, you need to take this seriously. And I was like, yeah, but you don't know me. So I did listen to him. I did listen to the doctor, and I did take the time off that I needed for my body to kind of just rest a little bit after being a college athlete. But then it was trying to find something else that I can do, because like I said a while ago, nobody prepares you for when you're no longer an athlete. And so trying to figure out, well, what's next for me? Tried cycling, tried yoga, tried Pilates, did not like it. Just wasn't for me. But then that's when I saw an ad on Facebook for a kickboxing class. And I was like, hey, mom, you want to go do a kickboxing class with me? I think it'd be fun. And so we went, and I instantly fell in love, and the coaches took a liking to me, and they saw an athlete. And so then it was trying Muay Thai, trying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then it was come spar with the guys. And so I found something that was me. But then it came down to the doctors again telling me, you can't run, you can't lift any heavy weight anymore, and you can't participate in any strenuous physical activity, which meant MMA. And I, again, was like, I hear you, but I'm not made of glass, and I'm going to go do it just to prove that I could. And so I got back into lifting. I ran a half marathon just to prove that I could run one, and then continued an MMA career. And I haven't looked back since, and there have been flare-ups. It is something that I'm still living with. I've never gone under the knife. They've told me that there was only a certain amount of flare-ups that I had left before I have no choice but to get my rib removed. And even then, it's not guaranteed that it's going to be a success the first time, because it can be so compressed that they'll have to go in again. And so this is a surgery that's serious. It's not always a success the first time. And so then it was just a matter of digging deep and understanding my body, understanding what it needs at that moment in time, and humbling myself with every workout, because it was so easy for me to push through workouts and to pretty much like crawl on the floor. But I can't do that anymore, because I need to understand that my body does have some limitations, and I need to be able to humble myself and listen to what it needs at that moment in time. And so MMA has actually helped a lot with that, and disciplining myself and disciplining my mind and my body. But in regards to another obstacle, I did have unhealthy and toxic relationship for 4.5 years. That was all through college and then some. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the people that I thought, was closest to me that didn't believe that something was actually wrong with me. And so that was a challenge in itself, because this is somebody that you're dating and they're telling you to hurry up and get it figured out, or, it's all in your head. And these are things that you're hearing from somebody closest to you, that you start thinking, well, is it all in my head? Is this something that I'm making up? But then it comes back to checking yourself. And you've been an athlete for so many years, when something's wrong with your body, and your body better than anybody else. And you have to advocate for it. And for every no or negative test or anything that you're getting, there is eventually, I can't say it's going to be tomorrow, I can't say it'll be a month from now, but eventually there is going to be somebody that looks at you as a full picture and not just the symptoms that you're having.
Wow. There's so much to unpack. I can't even unpack all that. You just spoke about it so eloquently, and every time I had a question, you pretty much answered it. But I mean, you're dealing with internal factors, external factors. I was going to ask you, so did you get the green light to continue being physically active after your collegiate career? And you kind of did, but then you kind of didn't after a while. And so you've had to really go inward and know your own self and be more intuitive with how you manage this silent illness that you have. And so is there something, because you speak about it, I don't mean surfacey, but like you have such a good mindset said about it. And I'm sure you have rougher days that you have to, get your mind right and stuff like that. But I guess, have you figured out anything that helps prevent you from having those flare-ups? I'm very curious about that, like whether it's nutritionally, sleep, stressors, like is there anything that works against you or for you in that case?
So the frustrating about having TOS is, honestly, anything can flare it up. Stress is a big one. Stress affects everything, honestly. But if you're so stressed, then everything tightens up, and then there you go. That's a flare up. If you're not getting enough sleep, then you're rolling out of bed and boom, flare up. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost been like a trial and error, because obviously there are some doctors out there that are like very quick to, no, go under the knife, get it removed, and problem solved. It's like, well, I don't want to do that unless I am backed up against the wall and I have no other choice. Fine. But I'm not there, and I'm not going to get to that point, because I've lived with it for so many years and I'm still living with it, but I've found certain ways that help me. So when it comes to sleep, it comes down to powering down my electronics well before I'm actually going to go to bed. Not only that, I'm wearing blue light glasses an hour before I go to bed. And so I'm taking these preventative measures to be able to fall asleep. And I even I don't use it anymore, but I did for 2 years, honestly, use a Whoop band.
Yeah.
So I can kind of just understand my body a little bit more and what it needs and what works and what doesn't work. And so I took it upon myself to do that. So like, okay, what else can I learn? And then when it got to a point where my sleep was on track, my recovery was on track, and I was like, okay, I'm good. I take what I learned and I apply it to my life. So that's, how I came up with the blue light glasses and the electronics. And every time I take a shower, the last 5 minutes of my shower, I make that cold. I'm not showering in, hot or lukewarm water every time. The last 5 minutes, I'm going to cool down my body, regardless if it's in the morning or if it's in the evening. But there are days that are hard. And honestly, most of them are harder than the easy ones. And so when I roll out of bed, it's funny because people can know if I'm having a rough morning, because with having TOS, it did take away some quote unquote normal things for me. And so like, I can't put socks on normally, someone just getting ready, they boom, put your sock on one after the other. I can't do that. I actually have to sit down. I have to pull my leg up to then put the sock over my feet, because if I were to just stand up, bend down, I'm going to have a shooting numbness pain go down my arm into my fingertips. And then that just is going to set me off the rest of the day. I just gave myself a flare up trying to put on my sock. And so I actually have to take my time getting ready and break up things that I need to do to get ready. If I wake up and notice that today's going to be a pretty rough day. And so when it comes to even putting on my shoes and my sneaker, I have sneakers that, I tie, but I also have sneakers that I don't tie and I just slip my foot in. And so if I go to work and you notice that I'm wearing ones that I haven't tied, it was a pretty rough morning for me to even get here today. And so it really depends. And, sometimes I can tell if, the next day is going to be bad, and sometimes I can't. And so the way I like to think of it is a spoon theory. And I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with the spoon theory, but think about every task that you have costs you a certain amount of spoons. You only have 12 for the entire day. And so brushing your teeth, that's going to cost you 1 spoon. Working out is going to cost you 3. There you go. That's 4 spoons that you've already used for the day. But driving to work is going to cost you 1. That's 5. Making a meal is 2. Now that's 7. You only have 14. And so by thinking of the spoon theory, you have to conserve your energy throughout the day. Can you make it the entire day with the 12 spoons? If not, you're going to take spoons from the next day, but now boom, there you go. That's your flare up the next day because you've already used up so much energy that now your next day, you don't have those 14 spoons to begin with. So that's the easiest way to explain what it's like living with a chronic invisible illness to someone that isn't living with a chronic invisible illness. Is it comes down to sometimes saying no to going out and doing things. Like your friends want to go out to dinner, but you're like, no, like I really can't do this. I want to, but I just can't. Sometimes it comes down to just saying no, having a day at home, take the ice roller out, roll out your something that's
Right.
going to benefit you. And that's hard. That's hard to say no sometimes, but thinking of how much energy you need to conserve so that you can be able to make it through your work week, make it through your days. So that's just the easiest way that I like to explain what it's like to live with it.
Well, it's certainly not comparable to a lot of the things that we have to, other people have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But I'm going to have to research that spoon theory a little bit more because I think a lot of us, everywhere I turn around, myself included, it's like the time management is the never-ending battle. We say even with recently, I've adopted the joy of missing out, JOMO, instead of the fear of missing out, FOMO, right? Like the joy of missing out. Well, actually, that's kind of like the spoons. If you respect that joy of missing out instead of having FOMO,
yeah,
your next day, maybe you'll have your ducks in a row a little bit better. You won't feel behind the 8 ball as much, whether it's energetically or just task wise, functionally. So it's a great analogy, and thank you for sharing that. I know it's a lot different compared to what you're dealing with, but it sounds like you're doing a great job at even though you say that there's more hard days than easy days, and most people, if you're having a good day, or people can identify if you're going to have a good day or a good morning, did you have your coffee yet? But for you, it's like, did you shut the electronics off early enough the night before? You taking your cold shower? How did you put your socks and your shoes on that morning? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, but it's awesome that you are controlling the controllables. So backing up a little bit, so you have all these adversities that you had in your life in a compact period of time at a young age. And then I know at one point you hit the reset button. I don't know that we really talked about that. I think I read it in your book, but you finally had to hit the reset button, and you went and you had an audacious goal to move across the country. Do you want to talk a little bit about that for a moment? And we might as well just combine that with, because you are the queen of vulnerability. And I know you talk about it. I've seen you doing presentations on it. So maybe you tie that in there as well at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the reset button probably came after the family struggles, to be honest. I'll touch on it a little bit. My brother was in the Navy, and while he was in the Navy, he intended on taking his own life. And there were so many people involved, myself included. He was stationed in Virginia. to be able to save his life that day. And when he was released from the Navy, he moved back home. And, that's our childhood home. And he intended on doing it again and posted a suicide letter on Facebook. And my mom and I were out running errands. My dad was at work. He was home by himself, wasn't answering his phone. There were so many factors in that day. And thankfully, he called the cops on himself and was like, I want to do this and I'm going to do it unless somebody shows up here. And so thankfully, he did take it upon himself to do that because he wanted help. He didn't want to take his own life. He wanted to get help. And so throughout this time, when my brother even left for boot camp, I was writing in a journal. That way, when we got his mailing address, I could send him something that he could read while he waited for letters. And it was stuff that he missed out on while he was away. And so that's how I realized I actually have something, which is why I started the book. And it was something that I kind of just continued at that point in time. But after the second time of my brother going to the psych ward, it was that quick reset button for me. And it was, the plan was never to stay in Connecticut. It's not what I wanted. It's not what I saw for myself, but things kept happening that kept me there. And so when my brother came back home and, started going to therapy and doing what he needed to get help, that's when I sat down, I spoke to my parents and I was like, this doesn't feel like home. I don't want to be here. This isn't helping me in any way. And my parents have always been so supportive and said, just go, move out, move in with one of your best friends, just go. But I told them that I wasn't ready. And I wasn't ready because I felt like I needed everything to be good before I left. And I didn't feel comfortable leaving before that. And so finally, when my career was good and I knew that I wanted to be a personal trainer, my family was good, my own mental health was good because I started going to therapy because I was like, if I'm going to help other people, I need to help myself first. And so finally, when all of those things were in order, is when I was like, okay, now's the time. I'm going to pretty much start my life now because I felt like I was living for so many other people and not myself. And so at that moment in time, it was like the universe was just like, hey, here's Todd Durkin. And so Todd, I've known the name for years, ever since he was on Strong. That's how I started following him and his journey. And he came out with Get Your Mind Right. I did his book launch team. And then all of a sudden he posts some, Todd, some motivational video on his Instagram. And I was like, you know what? Let me see if he has any openings at his gym. I know his gym's in San Diego. I have always wanted to live in California for even just a period of my life. I just want to experience it. And he didn't. He only had an internship available. And I was like, this is post-pandemic. The gym's just opened back up. I can't afford an unpaid internship in California. And so instead I sent Jeff and Todd my resume and my cover letter, which was extremely vulnerable for me to do. And it was taking a huge risk, knowing that the worst possible thing that they can do is say no or not respond. And they didn't do either of those. I got an email back 2 hours later and said, can you hop on a Zoom call? I had 2 Zoom calls. I flew out to California for a week. They offered me the position. And then I moved my entire life out 3 weeks after that. And so the act of even just sending my resume and my cover letter was a huge risk, but it came with a great reward. And it was also extremely vulnerable to move across the country with no family, no friends. And the only thing out here is where you're going to be working and who you're going to be working with. And that's all that I had. But then Todd obviously has his mastermind groups. And one of the things that comes with working at Fitness Quest is you can just go and peek your head in. And that's what I did one time. And then the second time he was like, why don't you come and, talk to everybody? And I was like, me? Why me? I'm 26 years old. Like, what do you want me to talk to these people about? And so I kind of introduced myself. I said who I was, what I'm doing out here. And then Julie, his assistant, was like, why don't you just sit right there and just stay for the activity? Okay. So I sat in between this woman and this gentleman, and I participated in the activity. And then I was actually going to leave until two other men kind of stole me for the day. And they're like, no, you're going to be in our group. And so
and Jenna, just to be clear, so you're working at Fitness Quest 10, you're a personal trainer. Todd's over in a section in a room where he holds his mastermind groups. So people may have flown in from all over, fitness professionals that he mentors, myself included, which was the next one, which is when I met you. It wasn't at that one that you're speaking of right now, but I just want to make sure that the listeners are clear. So Jenna pops her head in, and then yes, then you end up getting stuck in that room for the rest of the day.
Exactly. So I was stuck in the room the rest of the day, was part of this group, and there were so many opportunities to leave and to go home and eat and do whatever I want to do for the day. But I decided to stay. And so the last activity was kind of talking about a project that you're working on. And so it came time for me to share. And I shared that, I have this book that I wrote and that I would love for it to be published one day. I feel like it's something special. And I was vulnerable to say that. I could have easily just said, no, I just want to grow my career. Like, I pretty much just got here. And so we all got into a big group, and Todd calls on our group to kind of share what we discussed. And Andrew Simpson was actually like, oh, well, Jenna wrote a book and she wants it to be published. And Todd starts laughing and he goes, do you even know who you're sitting next to right now? It's like, no, because that's Kelly Watson. She, owns Scripter Publishing Group with Greg Justice, who's across the room. And so Kelly takes, paper and a pen, writes her information down, says, I hope to hear from you by Monday. And that's how that journey with Kelly even started. And the fact that it all stemmed from just being vulnerable and just showing up and being in the room, it turned into my book actually being published. And so that kind of propelled me even farther to be vulnerable, because vulnerability is a key emotion that we're all afraid of because of living. Honestly, you say something that you're passionate about or something that you want to do and you get made fun of for it, or you're being told that you can't do it because of X, Y, or Z. And at the end of the day, that emotion is key to success, to growth, and to healing, even though we're all afraid of it. And, sometimes rightfully so. But at the end of the day, if you're choosing growth and you're choosing to rise, you have to be vulnerable if you want to get to where you want to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I heard you also say before that most people are vulnerable because maybe something that they trusted with another person disappointed them, or didn't believe in you, or something that you even did to yourself, where you didn't hold yourself accountable enough, and maybe you didn't have the self-discipline to accomplish a certain goal. So you were being vulnerable by maybe having an audacious goal, and you disappointed yourself. So it's hard to be vulnerable, but you're so right. And so a lot of people have let themselves be vulnerable, and then they're scared to be vulnerable again, or that third time, or that fourth time, or that fifth time. But you're right. At the end of the day, through this journey of life, if we want to keep progressing and keep having success, or getting better, 1% better every day, you just have to keep being vulnerable. That's a huge, huge emotion that I think everybody is dealing with, everywhere, on all different levels, in all pillars of life, for sure. And you mentioned, with Choose to Rise, progressing 1% every day, or striving to progress every day 1% in all areas of your life, because you're going to create habits also, right? And that creates momentum. And part of those habits are showing up. Like, I think about the gym scene, or with physical fitness, there's a million excuses for people not to work out, rightfully so, essentially. But if they just show up, all of a sudden they've been in community and someone gave them a high five and they feel better about themselves, that's going to trickle into their day. And that day is going to trickle into the week, into their relationships, into the work they put out to their employer or their business if they have one, or to their families. And that's going to trickle into the month and the year, you know? So it all starts with that vulnerability. Yeah. So the mind can be it can be your power, or it can be your prison. You've talked a ton about that. That might even be a book title. I'm not sure, but I definitely heard it somewhere, and I definitely feel it in life and see it all around me. So what tools, you've already talked about a bunch of them. Like, I know you journal, but as far as like, what tools do you use to help make your mind be, work for you instead of be a prison? Journaling, I know like maybe talk about community a little bit. Does that help you? People believing in you, but then you having to also, I heard you talk about this but at the end of the day, you have to believe in yourself, but sometimes you just need someone to believe in you before you do believe in yourself, to give you that confidence. Sport, maybe some of your favorite mantras or your favorite quotes. I'd love to hear about that, but really quick about journaling, because you were mentioning this earlier. Recently, you may have heard that Ed Milet just launched a new book called The Power of One More, very much in line with what you and I, both of our platforms are about. And each chapter has kind of a different theme. And one chapter is the power of one more question. So earlier you were talking about some of your journal prompts. I think, Jenna, that maybe one of your next books might have to be some kind of a journal, because like I said, I've been journaling since third grade. No joke. Since third grade, I probably shouldn't mention this because maybe I don't want people to know, because I've got journals scattered everywhere. And I don't know that I really want anyone to read them or whatever. But I think like sometimes right now, Todd Durkin recently in the last year came out with an awesome journal. It has journal prompts every day that I answer, 3 to 5 minutes every morning and 3 to 5 minutes every night. That's wonderful. But I really think that the power of those questions that you ask yourself, and Ed Milet talks about how important questions are, but not just questions that really dictates what your life is going to be like, but what the quality of those questions are. So you can ask yourself questions that are going to create fear and doubt, self-criticism, or you can ask yourself questions that are going to be more optimistic and give you a little bit more courage and kind of help propel you into a better place in life that you want to be. What can work for you, or how can you make something happen instead of it can't happen? Just how will I make this happen? Just there's so many different types of questions. So maybe you could share what some more of what your journaling prompts are, or how you go about your journaling. What does your journaling practice look like? Do you just write freehand, or do you have like specific questions that you ask yourself?
Yeah. So one of the non-negotiables for me is, and I talk about this in my book, it's the 10-10. And it's something that I've been doing for years. And it was something that I kind of started, especially with everything that happened with my brother. It's every morning I write, not in my phone, I physically write it down, 10 things that I am grateful for and 10 things that I have to get done that day. And that's just a non-negotiable for me. It's something that starts my day with a very grateful heart, but at the same time, like, hey, you got these things that you got to get done. Now, can some of the things that I'm grateful for carry over the next day and the day after? Yeah, absolutely. Can I write, my family as number one every single day if I want to? Yeah. But sometimes it comes down to challenging myself, because those grateful lists can be as big or small as you want them to be. They can be your family, or it can be a sweatshirt on a really chilly day. And so I want to start my day with a grateful heart every single day. And then the 10 things that I have to do. But then when it comes into journaling, that's changing every day based on what I need. And so sometimes it's freehand and I just need to get these thoughts out of my head onto paper and actually seeing what I'm putting down. But sometimes when something serious is going on in my life, or I really need to check myself, then it's coming down to prompts. And it's something that I choose to do because, like you said, I can choose to write down very closed off questions, Or I can choose to be very optimistic and make it more open-ended and more growth-oriented. That choice is mine, and I'm going to choose this one every single time, even though some days it might be pretty hard. But that way, if it's a hard day, I can kind of manipulate the question to still be optimistic, but maybe it's not as deep yet. And so when it comes to the questions and how I prompt them myself, it's what's going on? What's a solution that I can do? What's a lesson? What am I learning right now? How can I be better tomorrow? How can I end the day with a smile? So it's things that I can manipulate any way that I choose to, but I'm always going to choose the more open-ended, optimistic side of the prompts.
That's awesome. Wow. That's great. And we'll have to share back and forth some more. I think journal prompts are one of the best things. And I definitely think that's an area that that probably is a high demand for. And that's maybe even why, like, I talk to different people that, I guess, depending on who I'm talking to or who I'm surrounded by, but that they don't want to journal. But there's statistics that show that when you do journal, I mean, you're more likely to accomplish goals that way. All kinds of great stats around it, but some people just don't have it. And I have found myself in a rut with journaling, and it actually surprised me maybe in the last year. And that's when Todd's journal actually came out, and that really helped me give me some more prompts. But I definitely find that now there's more of a need for some prompts. So
yeah,
that's exciting stuff.
Sometimes for people, they don't know where to start.
Yeah.
So, one of the major questions I've gotten was, how do I write a book? Want to, how do I write one? I'm like, just write. And they're like, but what? Like, no, just write.
Just write.
You just got to write. And so sometimes what I find with people that want to journal, they just don't know where to start. And you tell them just write, and they're like, but what do I write? And so if you're new to it, order, some sort of journaling book that has prompts. I think one of the big ones right now is Soul Therapy, and it's 365 days. There's a prompt every single day, one prompt. So you're setting aside like 5 minutes a day to answer one question, and you're doing it for 365 days. And so that's cool. A nice place to start. Yeah, I think it's called Soul Therapy. And it's just a nice place to start. Is if you don't know what to write, go get a journal that has prompts in it. Todd's journal, Soul Therapy, you can find them anywhere. And sometimes the questions are as simple as, if you could be any animal, what would you be and why? Sometimes it's things like that, but at least you can start to, think about these things, and then kind of almost start your own journaling journey in a sense.
Yeah. I do love what you said, though, that you do a lot of just like, you just start writing. But then when there's something going on specific, that's when you start to develop specific, more granular questions for yourself, so you can kind of navigate through whatever that thing is that's bothering you, So I see the great value in that. So how about, this is really important to me. It's actually on one of the projects that we're working on together, that will be out soon, revealed. One of my topics is about community. We all faced isolation with COVID, with the pandemic. And I didn't even realize it till after, because I've always been a pretty social person, but it was after that I started to realize some things. What did the isolation, the lack of community do to you, or maybe even some of your clients, friends that do you feel that community in person, because I know there's online community, we all had to resort to that if you wanted to take a class, maybe Zoom class, or, I've been through hundreds of Zoom meetings with my colleagues, and that's great. That's better than nothing. But there's something about that in-person touch, and that energy of being in the room together that stimulates one of the happy hormones, and there's 4 that contributes significantly to our happiness. What are your thoughts about that?
I 1000% agree with that. I know me personally, I struggled, with being in isolation and not being able to see my friends or other loved ones. I mean, obviously I was still at home, so I had my parents and my brother, but it was challenging, and it was trying to figure out how can we still get that interaction through FaceTime or Zoom or, all these funny apps that came out in order to keep people interacting and together. And so I absolutely agree that in person is just so much more of an impact on individual people, but also, as a group, than it would be to be virtual or online. And it affected a lot of my clients, but I am grateful for the clients that I had that switched over to virtual training, because they were still able to get their workouts in and still have that interaction with me, even though it was through a screen. It's all that we had at that moment in time. But I feel like that was their saving grace in isolation, just as it was mine as well.
Wow. Yeah. I think, did you find that you really realized it? Did you realize it more in the midst of it? Did you actually realize it, or was it more of a reflection in rearview mirror?
So when it first happened, it was such a switch, because when it first happened, it was like, wow, this is going to be, almost like a mini vacation, like, aside from other things that were going on, and as tragic as these things were that were happening to other, families and individuals, it was almost like a step back for a lot of us, where it was like, okay, I'm still training people virtually, but I can sleep in. I can kind of just like check myself and get like my mental health in order, get my physical self in order. Because as you know, as a trainer, it's honestly a lot harder for some of us to maintain our physical side of everything, because we're training so many hours a day and we're exhausting ourselves, that when it comes time for us to work out, it's like, oh, I don't know if I can even get a half an hour done. So it was almost a step back, where it was like, this is actually what I need right now. And it's going to be great. But then you have a switch where you're like, I can't see my friends. I have to wear a mask everywhere I go. And, you're looking at people's eyes. Everyone is just so upset and depressed. And you're like, this is awful. And I don't know what to do, because I took care of myself. Now what? Now I don't know what to do. And so then it was that shift where this isn't great anymore. And so now you're like falling back in the hole, where you've done so much to help yourself, and now you're falling back in the hole, and it's just trying to figure out how to get back out of that. And some people have, and some people haven't yet. And so how can we reach the people that haven't yet and help them get out of that rut or that hole that they're in, because of what the pandemic did to our world?
Now, do you think those are those people that are still continuing to maybe seclude themselves a little bit, or are these people that you're seeing every day? Because I always think about, who are the people that are not showing up for the workouts wherever I may be at the time, and again, it's like that do a little bit more, call that one extra person. I think about that, call that extra, one more person in your family that you haven't talked to in a while, that maybe needs to hear your voice to lift them up for the day. It could be one person that just needs that little kind of, kick and kiss to meet them at the gym. Even I've done that with friends, is like, I'll meet you, because they're not getting there on their own. I'll meet you, even though I have this whole other plan of what I think I need to do for the week. I'll meet you, because I know it's going to actually propel them, give them a little bit of momentum. So do you have like a couple of thoughts of how to help pull those people out of the rut of what happened in isolation?
Yeah, I mean, definitely calling people that maybe you haven't spoken to in a while, or, meeting them at the gym, going for a walk, even if this person is still wearing a mask and they're taking precautions, that's fine. If you even just go on a walk with them, just have these conversations, call these people, and honestly, call the friends also that seem like they're the strongest ones. Because it may seem like to you that they're thriving and they're doing great, but at the end of the day, sometimes the strongest people that you have in your life are the ones that are crying to themselves in the shower, crying themselves to sleep and feeling like they're alone or feeling like they have no one. And so, call people, set aside time for these people, even if you have to add it in your list of to-dos, in your 10-10. Hey,
calendarize it.
Call your aunt and call your childhood best friend today. And if you can't get in contact with them, send them a text message and say, would love to catch up, or would love to, go for a workout, something. Right. You have the control to do that, but make it a priority to do that, because I know I appreciate it so much when my friends check in on me, because I'm the one that checks in with a lot of people, but to have that turned around on me, and I'm like, it's almost like a check for me where I'm like, oh, you know what? I haven't been okay. Like, let's have a venting sesh. But call everybody, text everybody. I mean, put it on your to-do list. It doesn't have to be everybody in one day, but maybe 2 a day, because you don't know what can happen in this life. You just, there's been people in my life that have just passed away suddenly at a young age, and we don't know why. Right. Or they had an underlying heart condition and nobody knew. And so people in your life could be gone tomorrow. They could be gone in the next 2 hours. And you don't want to sit there and say to yourself, I should have called them, or right. I should have just hung out with them, something. And so start adding it to your to-do list, maybe like 2 people a day.
That seems so simple, but it's so true. I'm already thinking of certain people myself that you got to calendarize it like anything else. But I'm not going to be surprised if all of a sudden you start getting, if any of your friends listen to this podcast, you start getting all these phone calls, because you definitely are, your life is unrecognizable in a good way today, right? And you're such a strong girl, and I commend you for that, and you inspire me. And so now if your friends heard this, they're going to know we got to check on strong Jenna. But I started to giggle because my mom will call me and she's like, how's everything going? And I don't want to create any stressors in her life or whatever. And she's still working full time. And there was one day that she called me. I'm like, I'm good. Everything's good. And then like she dug a little bit. And then I ended up breaking down crying. Yep. And I'm like, I guess I'm not so good. You know what I mean? Because you said sometimes it will make you kind of self-reflect a little bit on a different level than maybe you do that self-regulating stuff on your own, journaling or whatnot. And then that's eye-opening, and that can only help you. So gosh, we could talk for hours more. Jenna, you have been so informative. I love definitely all kinds of stuff I'm going to research that you shared with us today, but I like to have my listeners have a call to action. So maybe you can help me with this. If not, I'll think of something really, really fast right now. But like, how can we help the listeners to choose to rise, and not just choose to rise, but do it now? I don't know if your tattoo is accessible. Yep, there we go. And look at what time it is. Show that again. Show that again. Look at what time it is. I don't know if you can see it really good, but the time is now. I love that tattoo. So, what can we have for a call to action to help people choose to rise now?
Yeah, I mean, like I put it there for a reason. The time is now. The past is dead. It's gone. I can't change it. The future hasn't even happened yet. So why am I going to spend so much time stressing over it when what I can focus on is the right here, right now? The time is now for me to make a change, and now for all of your listeners to make a change as well. If you feel like you are stuck in this life, or you feel like you're destined for more, then this right here is your sign to choose to rise and go get it. And if there are obstacles in your way and you don't know how to overcome them, speak to people, reach out to people, because you are not alone at all. There's somebody out there that can relate to you or what you're going through, and find those people. There are support groups, there's therapy, there are friends that can just talk to you. And so reach out to people. You don't have to figure out this little game called life by yourself. It's not meant to figure it out by yourself. And
that's great. Yeah.
One of the, I mean, you asked for quotes. I love, you know, climb the mountains in life with exclamation points, not question marks. So go do that. If you want that and people are telling you no, get rid of them. Get rid of them from your life, because all that's going to keep is that toxic energy. And it's like the crab in the bucket analogy. If you have all of these crabs, they're constantly pulling the other crabs down. It's not going to get out of the bucket. But if you have that one crab just by itself, it can get out of the bucket. And so find the people in your life that are going to be in your corner, that are going to support you no matter what, that are going to check you when you need it, and that are going to cheer you on every single step of the way.
That's wonderful. All right, everybody, listeners, did you hear that? If you want to share what you're going to attack this week, right now, though, like what's popping in your brain right now when we talk about this? I know that everybody listening is thinking of at least one thing. So if you want to share it, great. Or just, you know, give me some muscles in the comments, and that'll let us know that you heard us and you're doing something about it. And you know, that's going to take maybe a little bit of vulnerability. And like Jenna said, if there's something in your life that's making you stuck and you have people in your life that don't help you to grow or glow, then, you know, you might have some decisions to make there. So who should read this book? I'm saying if you're human, you should read this book, and you can pick it up. I'm going to put the information in the comments, in the commentary of where you can find Jenna on Instagram, and in her link tree, you can order the book right there. But if you're a parent with kids that are having a hard time adjusting to change, adolescents being bullied or witnessing bullying happening, high schoolers, anyone dealing with toxic relationships, injured athletes, or someone that you know, maybe this is a gift. You know an injured athlete. Maybe it's your child, it's your niece, it's your nephew, it's your uncle. Maybe they need to read this book. And regardless of the level, working class that's struggling, you know, to fit fitness in, if you're human, then my opinion is that you should read the book, and I will share with you how you can access that. But thank you to all of the listeners to watching and listening, because I know that there's a lot competing for your attention. There's so many things you could be listening or watching. So again, thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, and absolutely, if you found any value in this today, then please share it, because somebody might need to hear this message, and it could be a major game changer for them in the trajectory of their day, their week, their month. And listen, go thrive, don't just survive. And you can do that by turning up the heat and choosing to rise in all areas of your life. See you next week.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round. And you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move.